The truth will make you free at Freedom Force TV. You are listening to the Dustin Gold Standard.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dustin Gold, and this is the Dustin Gold Standard. Tonight, I have a very special guest. His name is Dan Golvach. He is an angel parent. His son, Spencer, was murdered on January 31st, 2015, at the age of 25 by a 4 times deported illegal alien who had a 15-year violent rap sheet and actually served 5 years for attempted murder while he was in jail. He was deported back to Mexico in 2010, and he came back for the 5th time that we know of.
That's really where my life ended. I'm not living now, I'm just functioning.
Dan Golvach knew returning to the spot would not be easy. On January 31st, 2015, Spencer Golvach, Dan Golvach's son, was headed home from a night out with his girlfriend when authorities in Houston say Victor Reyes pulled up next to the 25-year-old and shot him dead, less than a mile from Golvach's apartment. Reyes killed 2 people that night and wounded 3 others before Harris County Sheriff's deputies killed him in a shootout.
You know, immediately you start asking questions. Well, who, what, and how? And so then the information started trickling in. Okay, it was an illegal alien. Okay, what about the illegal alien? Well, we know he's been deported some.
Reyes, a native of Reynosa, Mexico, just across the border from McAllen, had a criminal record listing burglaries and assaults dating back to at least 2002. He had been removed from the country 4 times, but every time he re-entered. Reyes faced up to 20 years in federal prison in 2005 after he beat up an inmate when he was already behind bars for his 4th illegal re-entry. But the U.S. attorney offered him a deal. In exchange for accepting responsibility, Reyes served just 5 years and was deported upon completing his sentence in 2010. He would illegally re-enter a 5th time. A U.S. Justice Department spokeswoman said such plea deals are made to ensure convictions are secured without undergoing costly trials. But Dan Golvach said the system needs major change.
This idea that there's any kind of border is a joke. I turned right back around and moseyed on up to the sanctuary city of Houston, and he was open for business.
For a number of years, critics said Houston was a sanctuary for undocumented immigrants because, for one, Houston police were forbidden to ask a person's citizenship status. And the city did not have a good working relationship with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, detaining what they call criminal aliens in the jail.
So please push this bill forward so we can start enforcing the laws that are already on the books.
Weeks after burying his son, Golvach testified during the 2015 Texas legislative session for a bill that would have required local authorities to cooperate with federal immigration agencies. But the legislation stalled. Opponents of such policies argued that strict immigration enforcement at the local level would result in undocumented immigrants arrested for minor crimes getting deported, breaking up families.
When they talk about compassion, splitting up families, well, you know what? I'd rather have Spencer in another country that I can go visit him, because I can't visit him where he is right now. We did the cleanup ourselves.
Spencer's mother, Julie Golvach, has spent the past year seeking answers to basic questions from Houston police, the Harris County Sheriff's Office, and federal immigration authorities. With so many jurisdictions involved, the victims from that night say they feel as though the information has been a hot potato, with each agency often referring them elsewhere.
It was almost like it was top secret information, you know.
John Weston was another victim that night, shot in the jaw at a nearby intersection minutes after Reyes killed Golvach. A year later, a Harris County grand jury declined to proceed with any further action related to the case. Details about the case are starting to trickle out, but there is much Weston and the other victims' families still don't know, like where Reyes lived or worked, where he got the pistol he used, or a definitive motive. Federal authorities who apply privacy protections to undocumented immigrants have yet to release his detailed immigration history, while Harris County and Houston police have cited ongoing investigations for withholding criminal records in the case, information Julie and Dan Golvach say would start to answer how Reyes remained here illegally.
And by virtue of illegally, it means he's not really supposed to be here. So yes, if he was not in this country, then he would have not been here to shoot my son.
His mom does this stuff.
The pair visits Spencer's gravesite often, where they choose to focus on all of the good he did during his short life, instead of the circumstances that took him away.
He developed the passion for music, and that was what made our bond between me and him so strong. And I can tell you that, I was always his dad first, but he was also, bar none, he was my best friend.
In Houston, this is Alana Rocha reporting for the Texas Tribune.
That night, this man pulled up along the side of Spencer's car and shot him in the head. He murdered another person that evening, not connected to Spencer in any way. And he also shot another person who was highly injured. It all came to an end when he faced off with a police officer who took his life. Tonight, I have on
Dan Golvach. I'm the father of Spencer Golvach. My son was murdered by an illegal alien on January 31st of 2015, 12:55 a.m. in the morning. He was just sitting at a red light in the neighborhood that I grew up in, and this illegal alien that had a long violent criminal history pulled up next to Spencer and randomly chose my son's head for target practice. And this is my son. He went on to shoot another young man named Juan Garcia. Later that morning, we had the two police officers and the chaplain show up at the door, and that was the beginning of sorrows when we were told. And it's been a place of despair, and we want to just tell our story and let other Texans know the danger that exists and the things that we're being made vulnerable to, and we hope to bring awareness to that.
You're listening to the Dustin Gold Standard on Freedom Force TV.
Dan, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come to talk about this issue. It's something that's kind of a hot button issue, obviously, for me.
Yeah, Dan, it's something I've been interested in, border and immigration issues since 2006. I want to ask you, you're in Houston, Texas. You were in Houston, Texas at the time. How did something like this in 2015 happen in a red state? I mean, we know that America has an issue with porous borders. It's something that Donald Trump brought up in 2016. It's something that was widely circulated back in 2006 to 2008 when Lou Dobbs was on CNN and Congressman Tom Tancredo out of Colorado talked about the issue almost daily in the presidential races back in 2008. How did this happen in the state of Texas?
Well, Dustin, that's exactly the question I was asking myself when this happened. Is, we've got a Republican governor, a Republican lieutenant governor, a Republican Speaker of the House. How is this guy just out, who's been deported 4 times and had this massive record and just out fun shooting, randomly picking, it's high on cocaine and alcohol and just for fun, just shooting Americans. And so not long after that, I started reaching out to state reps and so forth, and I they were happy to come take pictures, and there was a lot of there was a well publicized event. And around this time, it was a few weeks later, I happened across Maria Espinosa, and that's when I really started to get somebody was squaring with me and giving me a really good education and getting me up to speed on the minutia of this issue. And the fact of the matter is,
and I know we're gonna get into Maria Espinosa, but I just need to ask you this. I've I'm in my 30s. I've lost obviously grandparents. I even lost some friends in high school to a boating accident. I have a cousin who's a couple years younger than me now that I'm losing, in the opioid epidemic. Obviously, I've never lost a son. I mean, what is it like? I just got to ask, what is it like when you get that phone call or you get that knock on the door?
Well, initially, you have to hear the words a few times. And it's the most profound event you could ever imagine. And it's the darkest, sickest, you've heard the term every parent's nightmare. Well, that's the best way I just can describe it. It is truly, in every sense, a nightmarish ordeal, and it lasts. It's still with me.
And the thing, Dan, I just to be clear for the audience, I think, not to say certain cases would be worse, but I think in your particular case, you're someone who had been studying and interested in, theology, politics, history for a long time, for, you said, the better part of your adult life. So for you, when this happened, as compared to some people who may not pay attention to anything, they don't even realize that these problems exist until it lands on their doorstep. I mean, for someone like yourself who followed a lot of this before that occurred, it had to be even worse because no one really imagines it actually happening to them.
Yeah, that's the surreal part of it, is you can't believe you're that person in the news and you're that person looking at your kid's gravestone. It's just something that happens to other people, and you just it's just I've been through things in my life, but this was the most profound, deepest, darkest wound, and I'll never fully recover from it. I mean, your life is going to be marginalized. You spend your holidays and everything else at the cemetery, but it's just not. I tell people, my club is not a club you want to join. It's just a very dark place at times.
Yeah, and I've known you now for several months, so you've shared some photographs of Spencer in his casket with me. You've shared photos of when you're there visiting him in the cemetery on holidays, and there's a mutual friend of ours that you share that with, and it's it's heartbreaking, even for people that haven't gone through it. If you have a soul and you have a heart, you can understand what Dan is going through, and it should have never happened here in the United States. It should have never happened in Texas. So shortly after that occurred, I know that one of the things you chose to do was to lend Spencer's voice, to lend your story to certain legislation, certain policies, certain elected officials, certain candidates that you believed could help solve some of these problems so that other parents don't have to go through it again. I know you were just about to mention some of that, but I've seen stories about you and bills and things you've testified with. You've even been to the White House. You've been on stage with President Trump. And one of the people that you just mentioned earlier, Maria Espinoza, who's running for Congress there in Texas, she is a saint. She's someone that in 2009, 6 years before President Trump, or then candidate Trump, ever even came down the escalator and made his first speech and highlighted the issues with the border and the issues with our immigration policy, she started the Remembrance Project, which was for the purpose of telling the stories of angel families, people who had lost loved ones at the hands of illegal aliens. And that, whether it be from DUIs, all the way to situations like yours where it's just cold-blooded murder. And Maria was responsible during the election of Donald Trump for organizing a number of angel families, getting them on stage with President Trump, allowing them to be able to tell their stories. And luckily, candidate Trump was open to this and allowed a lot of parents to tell their stories. She's been at the White House. She's been there for signing of executive orders having to do with tightening up immigration policy and border security policy. Tell us a little bit about her, because you've known her for many years, and you only have the best things to say about Maria.
Yeah. Maria is just the real deal. You know, early on when I was testifying for a sanctuary city bill in 2015, we had a state, Sylvia Garcia, she was then a state senator, came up and was flippant and just, sorry about your son. And, I saw Maria, she got up in her face and she said, that ain't good enough. And that's when I realized that this woman is in the battle. She's in the front lines, in the trenches of this, and she is not gonna take this bull. And she was speaking out for American families, and was putting herself up against these politicians on both sides of the aisle. And because she understood what was happening. She understood the motivations behind why Democrats and all Republicans wouldn't put Americans first and secure the border and do away with sanctuary cities and, pander to illegal aliens.
Yeah, I know. And I had the pleasure of meeting her along with the first time I met you, and we had dinner. And it's an interesting thing, because people will ask me all the time, because that have seen Maria on television or with the president or with the Angel families, is she an Angel mom or an Angel family member? And I always, at first, I didn't know, because I had seen her for years, and I said, that's interesting. But she is not, correct?
No, and that's a good thing. That's been a very positive. Well, of course, you don't want anybody to be an Angel parent, but I think it's worked out best that Maria it heads us up instead of a parent, because parents, you can get too tied in, emotional, and she sees everybody's story, not just one. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's important. And she has touched so many, helped and given a voice to so many people that are in my shoes, and that otherwise we wouldn't have had. I would have never met with the president the times I did, or if it wasn't for Maria, and I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have known also who my true friends and foes were if it wasn't for her. And you can go back to in 2011. Texas tried to pass a sanctuary city ban, and Maria was there testifying for it. That could have possibly prevented my son's death. It would have made it a lot harder for my son's killer to set up shop and roam around in Houston. That's for sure.
Thank you. My name is Maria Espinoza. I'm with the Stolen Lives Quilt. We're based out of Houston. I'm a co-founder there. And Stolen Lives Quilt was created to honor and remember Americans killed by illegals, people who should not have been in this country to begin with. And ladies and gentlemen, about 3 years ago, on a sunny day in Houston, Texas, Tina Davila was stabbed to death, a mother of 5, when she went up to pay her cell phone bill. The killer who stabbed her was an illegal. He drove that knife into her heart, 3¼ inches into her heart, killing Ms. Davila. Now, her family is shattered. The children ask, why? Why did this happen to my mother? Why was he in this country to begin with? Why was he not deported? Why do I have to be raised in 2 different households and not see my brother and sisters? That's the truth. Now, Tina, it's not just across the border away from her family. Tina's feelings aren't hurt. Tina is dead. She is no longer with us. This is a matter of what's the law and what is right. It's not about feelings. It's not about race. It's about the law. it makes sense to allow our officers to do their job. It makes sense to protect the families of Texas and ultimately the United States. My father was from Mexico. He came here, went through the process, and became a citizen. He taught us to work hard, become a valuable member of society, to learn English. We don't need translators. To respect the laws of the country, to contribute and do your best. Now, all we ask here today is for you guys to do what's right, to do what is the common sense of allowing the officers to do what they can do, what they should do. Officers Canales, Chief Mendoza, Rodney Johnson, ask their families what's right. It is right. It's common sense to allow officers to check the immigration status because they are illegal. Let's not allow these officers' lives to be for naught.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
One of the main people, the main groups that came in and stopped it from being passed, it wasn't a Democrat group. It was a Republican by the name of Bob Perry Homes. And it's a real estate firm. Him and Charles Butt with HEB are basically the two guys that came in and bought off all the politicians and stopped this bill dead in its tracks. That, they enabled my son's killer. It's as simple as that. And that was SB 9, 2011, Texas.
That was 2011. That was SB 9.
Yeah, it was HB 9, SB 9, and then it's just they rallied it, and because it's the cheap illegal labor interest lobby. It's part of their business model. They don't want they don't want their cheap illegal labor pool compromised because it can affect what size yacht they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, look, I mean, just to go back for a second, I think you're right when you said the fact that Maria Espinoza is not an Angel family member, but to have someone who's a victim's advocate, who's not actually a victim in this sense, I do think is a good thing. And, back in my 20s, I was fighting illegal immigration in the state of Connecticut, similar to Maria. I don't know why I was doing it. People would ask me why I was doing it. I never ran for office at that time, never took money from anyone other than the individual small donations that we had from the group. People said, what is driving you to do this? And I don't know. I was just born with something. It was triggered. And I felt like I had to fight City Hall. And the weight of this issue was on my shoulders. And it was something I had to sacrifice and do. I don't know why. Why do some people join the military? Why do some people become police officers, firefighters, first responders? It's just a calling some people have. And I met her, and I could see it in her. She has that fire in her. She right now is going to be facing off. End of February starts early voting. The primary, she's running in the Republican primary, is March 3rd. Now, I've talked to a number of people who have been involved with Texas politics. One of the issues that the Republicans have in Texas is the establishment will actually prop up and run several candidates in the Republican primaries for the sole purpose of stripping away votes from usually the one actual outsider, the one real conservative, the one patriot, so that way their establishment puppet, their favorite candidate, can win with 18, 20, 21% of the vote in the primary. I want to bring up, I've looked at the numbers, and usually you can tell from open secrets, you can look at the donations, and you can usually tell who's the establishment favorite based on the amount of money one currently has in their campaign account. And from very early on, several months ago, this race, there's a gentleman who is the front runner. He's backed by the Republican Party out of Washington, D.C. He's backed by Kevin McCarthy, who is the Speaker of the House. This guy, and he also is connected to Perry Homes and some of these other organizations that you mentioned there in Houston. His name is Wesley Hunt. Now, as of the last time I looked at Open Secrets, he was at about 1.4 million in his campaign account. And I know Maria was somewhere around 275,000, and there was a couple other candidates in that range, and then many others who were far below. Wesley is being treated by the media, the establishment media there in Houston, Texas, as if he already won. When they talk about the general election race, they only talk about their one favorite Democrat, and they talk about the one establishment Republican, Wesley Hunt. I know you've looked into Wesley Hunt. Tell us a little bit about him. I know on the surface, and I thank him for his service.
Yeah.
He went to West Point. He served in the military. But I want to remind the audience that just because you served in the military, I thank you for the service, but it ends there. If you're going to get into politics, I will judge you based on the record that you're establishing, either with your votes or the record based on who you took money from, because that's all I can judge you on. Wesley Hunt seems like he's a nice guy, but look at veterans that we have today. Ralph Northam in Virginia, he's made the news because he's on a gun grab in Virginia. He also supports infanticide, murdering a child outside of the womb. You have Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut in the U.S. Senate. Blumenthal was caught in a stolen valor situation almost a decade ago, lying about his combat service. You have former Secretary of State John Kerry, who ran for president and who is basically an Iranian puppet based on a lot of stuff that we're finding out to this day. So just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you're necessarily a patriot, a conservative, America First. George Soros, in fact, funds a huge left-wing organization called votevets.org, where he is recruiting veterans to run for office as progressive Democrats. So just because Wesley Hunt went to West Point and just because Wesley Hunt served in the military does not make him an America First Trump MAGA candidate.
No. I you know, it is a different issue because, I think that being a vet is obviously a good thing to have on anybody's resume, but it doesn't automatically assign virtue or American first ideology to that person. I'm not making any disparaging remarks or anything towards these people personally. I just simply look at, one of the things I look at when I found out that he worked for Perry Homes, and then I started seeing the super PACs and the big. Let me say this: I'm a conservative. I can't stand socialism. I don't believe in it. I think there's nothing greater than the fact that you can start a business, make a lot of money, and do well and contribute. Where it becomes a problem for me is when you take that wealth and you use it to buy off politicians to basically buy yourself out of the law, your way out of the law. The laws that are immigration laws that are designed to protect American citizens. And, you look at his employer, Perry Homes, that's exactly what they walked into Austin and did in 2011. And now he's got this big, it's called the C Club of Houston. It's a big real estate construction super PAC that, their business model is centered on illegal cheap labor. And you got to ask yourself, you elect this guy, do you think for a minute he's going to go up to Washington and defy their will and go against their agenda? That's just not going to happen. He's being put there to protect something, and that something is their cheap illegal labor pool.
And I just want to lay out a couple of points for the audience, because this is very important. So number one, Wesley Hunt worked for Perry Homes, I believe, for at least 18 months before he actually declared his candidacy. Number two, from my sources, have told me he was in the HR department. So if Perry Homes is utilizing illegal alien labor, that means that Wesley Hunt is involved with hiring illegal aliens. And I would venture to guess Perry Homes is also using visa labor as well, which means he would be involved with that. Now, when he decided to run, Perry Holmes, who also donates, and you can go to Open Secrets and look at this, to Kevin McCarthy's PAC, the Speaker of the House in Washington, the highest-ranking House Republican. Perry Holmes donates to Kevin McCarthy and many other Republicans as well. They've also donated to Bernie Sanders and many communists as well. But Perry Holmes donated the max amount to Wesley Hunt's campaign. So they're fully backing him. It was something in the range of $8,600, which is a lot on a House race. And we know they have the C group, and they're able to pump money into PACs and other, attack ad campaigns and other things outside of the federal limits on a House candidate.
Bob Wheatley and just all the big real estate tycoons,
Well, look, and I've been interviewing a lot of people around the issues of illegal immigration and both legal immigration when it comes to refugees, asylum, visas, student visas, work visas, all of this stuff. And the issue is that there is corruption all the way around. There's money to be made all the way around. So for the audience, it's not just about cheap labor for Republicans or votes for Democrats. That plays into it for the smaller end people. But on the big picture, a lot of these companies we're talking about in the C group, real estate, restaurants, farms, construction workers, not only are these guys using them for cheap labor, they also have another business, building and renting apartments, building and selling homes, building and selling supplies. There was recently a court case that was going on with President Trump trying to stop some of the welfare going to immigrants, and the big business here in the United States, Amazon, Walmart, submitted a brief actually complaining that if you turned off that welfare, then they weren't going to make money because all of the immigrants on welfare spend their money at Walmart and Amazon. I mean, they actually admitted this, that they want to continue to drive illegal immigration, more poverty-stricken immigration, for the sole purposes of profiting off the welfare, our tax dollars being spent on their junk being made in China.
Yeah. We don't allow, like a chemical company to dump crap into a river or into a lake where we get our drinking water, all this. Why is it these people are allowed to basically circumvent the law and thumb their noses at our sovereignty, at the laws that were, again, designed to protect us? That is, all these things that you mentioned as far as renting and construction, I'm all for that as long as you're not making part of your business model shredding immigration laws and getting, offering up people's children like they did mine as a blood sacrifice to their god of cheap illegal labor.
Yes, I'm a classical liberal, a Jeffersonian classical liberal when it comes to our God-given constitutional rights. You can do, or supposed to be able to do, almost anything in this country that you want as long as you're not infringing on other people's equal rights. What these guys are doing is using their power, their money, their influence to change the laws, skirt the laws, actually break the laws and not get in trouble at the expense of other Americans, and usually all funded by the middle class, working class, American blue-collar workers. That is the truth of the matter, and they make us pay for this, and it's disgusting what they've done. Listen, recently, Don Hopper in Houston, he owns a small publication, recently asked Wesley Hunt, Maria Espinosa's challenger in the Republican primary, he asked Wesley Hunt about his affiliation with Perry Holmes. I saw this article, and the question he asked had to do with sanctuary cities. I know you're aware of it. Can you explain that?
It's really simple. He said, well, Houston's not a sanctuary city, that's the classic line that the left uses. Well, we're not a sanctuary city. Well, I have a dead kid that if he were able to talk, he would tell you, yeah, Houston is a sanctuary city. And if it wasn't a sanctuary city, how is it that in 2017, Texas finally did pass SB 4, which is a ban on sanctuary cities? So are you not aware of this, Wesley? and you're running for Congress, you're not aware that Houston was a sanctuary city and that Texas passed laws that would, fine mayors and police chiefs or whatever for not cooperating with ICE and doing what they're supposed to do to protect Americans. You're not aware of this? And you're going to tell us that Houston wasn't a sanctuary? That's crazy. That's just crazy.
No, it is. I mean, it really, honestly, and again, this guy is running for office, and I've been to Texas. I'm going back to Texas. I've been working on an ongoing investigative documentary on the border and border towns and the cartel activity. I mean, traveling all the way up through these trafficking routes, 7,500 miles from the border, and going up into your area, Houston, and then flooding up into Tarrant County, and then literally spreading all across the country. Wesley Hunt should know this stuff. It's a very important issue. If he is not going to Washington with the intention of funding a 2,000-mile border wall, deporting all illegal aliens and curbing legal immigration until we get a handle on this mess in the United States, then he is not an America First candidate. And if he doesn't know about the problems and the history of what occurred there in Texas, he has obviously chosen not to educate himself on those issues, or he's ignoring it, and that's how I see it. Either way, it's a problem, and either way, you end up sending someone to Washington who is not looking out for the interests of liberty, freedom, prosperity, and sovereignty here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, Dustin, most of these the established Republicans, their protocol for a candidacy is they're going to tell you, yeah, we're going to secure the border. We're going to, we all are all about border security and, stopping the bleeding. But you have to look at who's backing them. If you really want to know the truth about a candidate, look at his donors. Look at the oligarchs and the plutocrats that are behind him and ask yourself, do you really think the people that are spending all this money that's giving him you said 1.4 million or something ridiculous amount of money for his candidates, do you really think that they're sending him up there so he can turn around and compromise their cheap illegal labor pool? That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, and for the audience, look, I've been in and around politics for over a decade. I mean, the dirty secret, well, one of the many dirty secrets, whether it be on a federal level, state level, even a local level, if someone is backing your campaign, even say the Chamber of Commerce, because they get involved with all levels of elections, they're making an investment in your ability to vote the way they want. So they own you from the moment you're willing to take a check from them. You made an agreement to them. They don't invest their money into you, whether that be George Soros or Tom Steyer or Michael Bloomberg on the left, or whether that be the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, or Perry Holmes on the right. When they give you a check, they are buying you for life. They don't let you go into office to not vote with them or to quit after 2 years or 6 years if you're in the Senate. They buy you for life, and you need to keep running and winning because they invested in you. That's how it works. Just like if you were starting a new company, you're the CEO of a startup and you go raise investment money. That company who invested in you, they want you there running that company until either the day that you guys sell it and cash out, or you stay there while that company is raking in the money. And that's how it works with politicians. That's how it works in the entertainment business. That's how it works with the news business. That's how it works a lot in the music business as well.
Yeah. The irony of this that I find, especially with Republicans that do this sort of thing, their whole thing is, well, we want to keep, capitalism and, the business, that's, which I agree with. But you're short-sighted because the hard data shows that, immigrants have voting patterns, and it's, I think it's the Pew Research Center had it at 73% that they vote for Democrat. So, you've seen what's happened in Virginia, and you're seeing what's happening to Texas. Eventually, what you're going to do is usher in your own doom. Your one-party Marxist type system that's going that doesn't give a rat's behind about your business model or your business or you. So it's, yeah, you might be in the short term, strengthening your bottom line, but eventually you're laying minefields for yourself.
Yeah, look, especially if you call yourself a Republican or anything right of a Republican. I recently had an interview with Dr. Stephen Camarata of Center for Immigration Studies. He's been studying the effects of illegal and legal immigration on the United States for over 2 decades. He's a regular guest on Fox News and with many other publications. And Dr. Camarata is a very nonpartisan guy. He's a statistics guy, a numbers guy. That's what he studies. And he said, look, for anyone who wants to look at this from a Republican Democrat standpoint, okay, foreign born, that means illegal, legal, anything in between. Them, their children, their grandchildren vote 2-1 Democrat. And Pew Research, as you mentioned, showed that foreign born, first generation here, votes 73% Democrat. And the New York Times even bragged right after the Democrats flipped the state of Virginia, the House, the Senate, and the governorship. They bragged there was a 20-year plan using demographic warfare to flip the state with a foreign-born population, and that's their recipe for Florida. That's their recipe for Texas. So any of these so-called Republican businessmen are complete and total liars because they know this. You're talking, guys, people that are worth 10 million, 100 million, a billion. They're not stupid. These are intelligent people. And if you're willing to sell out the future of your country for an extra couple of bucks on your bottom line, when you know damn well these people are voting 2-1 when it goes first, second, third generation, or 73% on the first, Democrat, and we're not talking the Democrat Party of John F. Kennedy today. The Democrat Party today is synonymous with third world banana republic. Look at San Francisco, look at Portland, look at Seattle, look at Los Angeles, look at Chicago. Look at these places where people are defecating on the street, tent cities set up all over the place, disease spreading around. That's what the Democrat Party represents today. And if you call yourself a Republican businessman who's willing to sell out your children and grandchildren's future for an extra couple bucks, you are not a Republican, you are not a conservative, and you definitely don't love America.
Yeah, you're not America first. And see, that's what I know about Maria. And I just, especially, I want to speak to people in District 7, the good people that listen to me. Especially if you're a parent, we can't continue to go do the status quo and go down this road. We have to try something different. We have to get somebody in there that is not shackled to the cabal, the oligarchs and the plutocrats that don't give a rat's behind about you or your family. I know Maria. I know her as a candidate, but I know her as a friend. I've known her ever since this happened to my son, her and her husband, Tim. And let me tell you, she is not for sale. She will put America first. That I'm sure of. I don't have anything to gain from this. I've already lost everything. It's never, I don't want you to join my club. I want you to listen to me. They're not telling the truth about what's coming over the border in the first place. And we're Douglas Ducote's show is trying to expose that. Your children's future is at risk. We're at the 11th hour with this stuff. We can't continue to vote in. I don't care how much more ad time or campaign funds they have. We have to buck that system. We have to look at the real America first patriots that are running that probably don't have all that backing and all that, the coffers and the big money coming in from the real estate lobby. But there's things more important. You don't want to spend your holidays at the cemetery like I do. You don't want to turn on the TV and then have to listen to day in and day out about the poor separated families at the border, all along knowing that people don't really know what a separation is until they go to the cemetery. And Maria has been the vanguard. I mean, she has been in this fight for so long. She knows it. She knows all the minutia, all the ins and outs of it. And like I said, she is not for sale. You cannot go buy off Maria Espinosa. She is going to do what's right for Americans, American families, and American sovereignty, and to preserve our country. That's what I know about Maria Espinosa. And I'm not just saying that because she's my friend. She's my friend because I know this about her, because she's a great candidate, because she's a good person. And we need some good people like that. That, you know, her and her husband could be living a lot better, easier life than they do. But they do this, and I've seen it. I know them. They do this because they love our country. And they're in that class of people that will step up and make personal sacrifices to try to preserve something that's worth preserving. In this case, our country and our families and the lives of our children. And we've got to stop this. We cannot continue voting for establishment, big money Republicans. We have to find, obviously we don't want Democrats, but we have to find people that are real. And she is real. I would know by now. It's been 5 years, and you know, she has gone. I've gone in the trenches in the front lines with her. I see her. I know that she's for real. And the only way I can honor my son, I can't bring him back, but I can honor his memory by trying to prevent this from happening to other American families. And I know that Maria Espinosa in District 7 is the answer. I know that for a fact.
Now, you bring up a great point, Dan. I hear people all the time saying to me, for the last 3 years since Donald Trump won the presidency, you know, where are the MAGA candidates? Where are the America First candidates? And I would tell people all the time, look, if you wait around for two lawyers on either side of the aisle to run, you're going to end up with more of the same no matter what they tell you. And the establishment of both the right and the left, which in fact are just a uniparty, are recruiting military. They're recruiting former intelligence officers to run, people that they can wave the American flag around.
He was a Democrat.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Voted for Barack Obama. While Maria was in the front lines in the trenches of this battle against the invasion of our country, he was voting for, you know, supporting Barack Obama. But, you know, it's just follow the money, and we can't let this happen. I just want people to know that if you support Maria Espinosa, you're going to get the real thing.
Yeah, and I think the audience needs to understand that, and anyone there in Texas listening. Like Dan said, I mean, then to shorten this up, listen, you can keep voting for more of the same. I know what everyone thinks. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube as everyone else. I know that people sit there and say, when are the indictments coming? When is the wall going to be built? Oh, well, it's the Democrats. Oh, well, it's the rhinos. Well, here, you have an opportunity. I don't know about other races around the country. I'm not tracking them all. But in this race, you have someone who is the true outsider, who is the true America First candidate, who is the person who not only talked the talk, but walked the walk, who sacrificed things they could have been doing in their life for the last decade to get angel family stories told, to fight for legislation to protect American families. This is your chance to support someone who actually cares, who is going to go to Washington, and you know what? Maybe they won't succeed there, but they will be there to back up President Trump when he is ready to fight for these things that we want. And they will hopefully be there with a wave of new America First candidates that are hopefully running for office just like Maria is now.
Yeah.
If you choose to vote for Wesley Hunt because Kevin McCarthy or because the Republicans in Washington told you to, or because Perry Holmes and the rest of the illegal alien worker lobby there in Houston wants you to vote that way, then guess what? You're going to get more of the same. And 2 years from now, you're going to be complaining and say, Wesley Hunt is a sellout. No, Wesley Hunt is not a sellout. Wesley Hunt is exactly what he is. He is a puppet. He is a puppet of the establishment Republicans in Washington, and he's a puppet of Perry Holmes and the C Club in Houston, Texas. He is not going to backstab you. He's going to do exactly what he was told to do. It was you who failed to look up who was donating to him, who he works for, and to look into the promises that he's made and the statements he's made on record, voting for Barack Obama, not knowing that Texas had sanctuary city policies. So it is on you, the voter, to sacrifice, not vote for the pretty thing, the flashy thing, the shiny thing being put in front of you, but to vote for a true outsider, a true American patriot, someone who is actually going to put your kids, your grandkids ahead of themselves, and they aren't looking to get a payment from Perry Holmes or the C Club, and they sure as hell aren't looking to be Kevin McCarthy's best friend in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, Maria is that candidate. I'm sure of. I just have complete faith. You know, I've known her and I've seen her work up close, and I know that she's nobody's puppet. You know, she loves this country. She's just a solid American that you know loves her country and is giving voice to all these families that have been coming at you trying to tell you don't come here to our club. And yeah. I personally think that she had a lot to do with preventing a Hillary Clinton presidency.
She 100% had a lot to do with preventing a Hillary Clinton presidency. You know, as someone who followed that election and watched every single Trump rally, been to 12 rallies in person, it was the Angel families that sold me to gamble my vote on President Trump, to gamble my money that I made small donations to him, to buy a MAGA hat, to become part of trying to push that movement and that message. I was willing to take a gamble with him because, one, I generally knew what the rest of them were, and two, I said to myself, if this man is willing to allow these families and these parents to get up on the stage and speak for as long as they want on primetime television, when he could have been the one holding that microphone, it said to me, that's a guy I'm willing to gamble with. Either he is the most sincere person, you know, or the biggest con artist, and I was willing to take the gamble. It was people like you and other Angel families. It was people like Maria who organized them and got President candidate Trump to allow you guys to be there and tell your stories that put it over the top for me. So I would say, as someone who follows politics, you know, in the top 1 percentile, you guys were the ones that actually pushed President Trump over the top.
Yeah, imagine Trump without the Angel families. Imagine his candidacy, and then I can just tell you that the lion's share of those Angel families was that was the work of Maria Espinosa.
Yeah, and I've seen photographs of her in the White House, you know, even receiving a pen at an executive order signing. So, you know, Dan, I think, again, it's to reiterate, it's up to the people there in that district. And if Maria ends up watching this, I would make a recommendation to her since, you know, this all kind of came together, you know, the end. If Maria loses in the primary on March 3rd to Wesley Hunt, because the media is already claiming he's the winner and because the big money's behind him, I strongly and highly recommend, because this is about the future of America, not just one election, that immediately upon Wesley declaring himself the winner, Maria continues to run for the next election, because Wesley Hunt is going to go to Washington, D.C., and he is going to disappoint the voters. And if Maria is there to remind them over the 2-year period that Wesley Hunt is exactly what we're telling you tonight that he is, and he ends up selling out the people there in Texas, that she is right there alongside him to be the truth sayer she's always been for the last 10 years and actually be able to mount a giant challenge to him in the next election. Because this continuation of placing America First candidates into House seats, into Senate seats, is not something that's going to happen in one election cycle or two election cycles. Hopefully this movement grows, and this is something that occurs over the next 25 years. I mean, our country got this way because of 100 years of corruption and bad policy, and it's going to take 100 years to dig ourselves out of this. And it's only going to be through people like her who runs, and maybe one day you'll run as well.
Yeah, that's just reaching out to, like I said, again, the people in District 7. Yeah, we can have an opportunity to do something here that could actually, it would be just epic thing to happen if you could actually put someone like Maria Espinosa in Congress. It's possible. We can do this. We just need help. We need help. We need to get make this video viral and get the word out there. But because we're fighting the cabal money, and we have to resist, and we have to forge ahead with what we have. And it's I think it's winnable. I think it could be done. And if we get Maria in there, it is a major victory for the American First conservative movement, no question.
100%. So, Dan, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out with the audience? Again, for anyone watching this later in the video or skipped around, this is Dan Golvach. He is an angel father. His son Spencer was murdered in 2015. Cold-blooded murder by an illegal alien, 4 times deported, came back into the United States after serving 5 years in prison for attempted murder. Pulled up alongside Spencer Golvach, who was 25, young business owner, was launching his own music store. Actually, he was murdered the night before they were doing the launch party. Was shot in the head. Shot in the head by this guy.
In a red light.
And he had murdered at a red light. And he had murdered another person that evening in a similar fashion, injured someone in a similar fashion, and then decided to go head on with a Houston cop who ended up taking his life. I mean, think about Spencer when you're going to vote in the primary this year, because it's Maria Espinosa is the only person on that Republican ballot who's been fighting to tell the stories and to change the legislation in a meaningful manner for people like Spencer, and because of the things that had happened to him.
Well, the only last thing I could say is, from the heart of a grieving father that lost his child needlessly to an illegal alien, I can't undo the damage that's been done to my family. I can't bring my son back. I can only try to prevent this from happening to you folks. And it's for this reason that I believe firmly that Maria Espinosa deserves a chance, when you look at her history and all that she's done, to go up and represent District 7 in Washington, D.C.
God bless you, Dan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much to the audience. I'm Dustin Gold, and this is the Dustin Gold Standard.
You are listening to the Dustin Gold Standard, produced by Freedom Force TV.